Welcome to A Step Back in Time. Last week we were visiting about the words written by Matilda Ripple Dietrich in Waynesboro in Civil War days. When we left off, we were talking about the cost and the advertisements that were going on at that time. And some of the stories that Matilda has written down in this book are very interesting, some of them almost comical in that they put everything into poetry, it seems. For instance, Joseph Funk had a bowling alley and restaurant, first on Mechanic Street and later on Main Street. He was quite a character in the town and owned a lot of hounds. He would ride out to the country followed by the whole pack of hounds, and this scared some of the children. When he was located on Mechanic Street, he advertised thus: Mechanic Street restaurant ahead, Washabaws and Ludwig's Ale at 3 cents a glass. Come now or never, for we have more fun than ever. Also oysters, eggs, cheese, ham, bread, butter, and pickles. Come one, come all, both great and small, and roll the ball up and down the wall on Old Joe's Bachelor Hall. After moving to Main Street, his advertisement was 40 oysters for 25 cents, etc. And in the same paper, H.A. Fisher advertised, opposing Old Joe, 15 good oysters for 18 3/4 cents, or 40 stale ones for 25 cents, such as can be bought of Chambord. They had quirky advertisements, but some of them are just fantastic. For instance, there's another one that I was looking at just a moment ago. Here it is. Okay. First arrival of spring and summer goods. George Stover announces and then says, thankful of all the kind favors and patronage heretofore that stowed upon me, I again appear before the public with a continuance of the same, having just returned from the eastern cities with a fine selection of stock. So they would go away and get their products and come back. Glorious Victory is titled another article. Richmond taken by the Union forces, etc., and another Joseph Basor has just returned from the eastern cities and is now opening the most extensive stock of summer goods ever brought to Waynesboro, which he will sell cheap, cheaper than any house this side of Richmond. The community is invited to call and examine the stock, which I will take great pleasure in showing all who have favor with me a call. To convince you I have a splendid stock, I will enumerate a few of the leading articles now in the store. All I will sell at greatly reduced prices. This ad occupies a whole column and ends with country produce taken in exchange. T.L. Budd was an agent for Nabe and Company, celebrated pianos and Carhart and Meadham and Company Melodeons. He also gave lessons on those instruments in town or country. Amberston and Benedict had an up-to-date advertisement, usually a column, but it contained nothing startling. Waynesboro Savings Fund had the same advertisement from June 1858 until 1863, when it was succeeded by the First National Bank. They advertised they would pay the following rates of interest. For 3 months, 2%. 3 to 6 months, 3%. 9 to 18 months, 4%. Over 18 months, 4.5%. The treasurer was John Phillips. The first directors of the bank were Alexander Hamilton, George Jacob, and George Basor. Waynesboro had no resident lawyer until in January of 1864. Joseph Douglas opened an office in the room formerly occupied by Dr. Thos Walker. This supplied something that was long felt needed. So there's just so many things, that happened. It's interesting to read the history. She had quite a way with her words, and she noticed a lot of things. For instance, at an early hour the following Wednesday, the country people began to arrive in town. About 10 o'clock, at the ringing of the town clock bell, Colonel E. formed in line and marched to the grounds, followed by the citizens in procession on foot, on horseback, and in vehicles. In the woods, a stand had been erected for the speakers and a long table which was spread for the dinner. The Reverend D. Dorsey was called for and made a most solemn and impressive prayer, then an eloquent speech which was vociferously applauded. Then dinner was served. There were no street lights, and on Sunday nights families going to church often carried lanterns. Some families placed lights on dark nights in their windows along the streets. The fuel most used was wood. There was a borough ordinance that all wood brought into the borough for sale should be sold on the cord or fraction of a cord. The town council appointed the wood quarter, who chose his own deputies. They received 10 cents per cord measured. Waynesboro and other Pennsylvania towns along the southern border of the Cumberland Valley at the outbreak of the Civil War occupied a dangerous situation. At the outbreak of the Civil War, volunteerism for service began in the town, with a week away after the firing of Fort Sumter. The names of John E. Walker heads the list of the first volunteers which we have. On a certain day, which may still be remembered by old citizens for the stirring character of its events, Honorable Wilson Riley, a former resident who had become captain of a company called the McClure Rifles, came from Chambersburg into the interests of his company, and in the evening, in front of Civit's Hotel, delivered a brief but fervid address in his usual eloquent style. The next morning, the following named individuals left town to join his command at Chambersburg: Wilson Pilkington, John Ross, and Courtney Young. He was not considered a good, loyal citizen in those days, who failed to make demonstration of his patriotism by the profuse display about his home and place of business of the flag or the national colors in some shape. During the first summer of the war, the village was, so to speak, enwrapped in hunting. Public movement to the example of flag flying was not wanting. An immense hickory pole was cut in the mountain, brought to town, and planted in front of Civit's Hotel. From this pole, the largest flag I had ever seen was thrown to the breeze with appropriate ceremony. A week later, another large pole, 140 feet in length, was raised on the western hill of the street. Some time after that, 150 feet in length was planted on Mechanic Street. It's hard to see this. The colors of Waynesboro were visible miles away, and the wayfarer upon the mountains, whether friend or foe, could read while running the story they told. And that is all we're going to do for today out of the writings of Matilda Ripple Dietrich, Waynesboro and Civil War days. It's fascinating to learn some of the history of this great place that we live in, and we will be back next week with more in A Step Back in Time. Thank you.